I finally let myself spend a little bit of money, and I picked up a collection last weekend. I've got some mail calls. I've also hit up some comic shops in the last couple weeks and picked up a few things. So let's sit down and talk about what's been going on with Como comic books and show you some of the new arrivals that I've picked up in the last couple of weeks. Let's check it out. So since last fall, really, I've kind of shut down my buying. I hadn't been looking for collections. I hadn't been advertising that I was buying. I just kind of pulled back and let what fell in my lap fall into my lap, but I wasn't actively hunting. As everybody knows, if you've seen the video on the channel, I bought the TMNT #1, and it took a pretty big chunk of the war chest to secure that thing. So now we're finally past that. We're sticking our toe back in the water, and I happened to pick up a collection last week that had a crazy amount of just 90s weirdness. In an interesting turn of events, I actually discovered that I knew the guy whose collection it was that I was buying. The story was that it was found in an abandoned house across town over by campus. The seller had bought this house and these books were still in it. We start going through it, we wind up finding things, and it's actually a guy I know who used to be a member of the local comic community, so I hit him up and just made sure everything was on the up and up and got his blessing, secured the deal. And it's one of those things that he had written off the collection because it had been stored by a friend and that friend's basement flooded and everybody thought they were destroyed. As luck would have it, the books were actually in a different part of this house that did not get flooded, so some of them survived. There is some evidence of water damage on some of the books, and it doesn't appear that his entire collection is actually still there. It looks like parts of it had wandered off in years past, or maybe they actually were destroyed and thrown out, because in talking with him, there's a lot of stuff that he would have expected to be there that I did not get to pick up. But I shot a little footage of some of the best stuff. I've already gone through the collection and just kind of rough sorted it. Check out this quick clip of some of the better stuff that was in this collection. It's nothing that's gonna blow your mind, but there's some cool stuff in there. I picked out a few books that you saw in the video just to talk about them, give a little extra information about them. So first up, I pulled this Amazing Spider-Man 317. This is the last issue of the 3-part Venom story that Todd McFarlane told before he wound up leaving the book. The next time we'd see Venom after this issue in any significant kind of way, Eric Larson was actually going to be the artist on ASM at that point. I'm not much of a fan of what Larson wound up doing to Venom, but it seems like the community enjoys it, and you know, I'm not the gatekeeper of what makes Venom good, so you know, it is what it is. But for me, flipping through this issue, just seeing how McFarlane handled Venom in those early days, it's just everything I want from Venom. It wasn't slobbering, it wasn't tongue, it was just a dark, scary version of Spider-Man, essentially. And looking how he approached Venom in these early stories, you can see some underlying elements that he would reuse again when it came time for Spawn, when he was drawing Violator and some of the other demons in that series. So go back, take a look at these early McFarlane. Of course, you got 315, 316, 317, and 300 as well, that McFarlane introduced us to Venom and began to flesh that character out before he left the title. But check those out. See if you pick up those same vibes I was talking about in regards to his later stuff on Spawn. Next up, I pulled ASM 337. This book got popular a few years ago. It's just the return of the Sinister Six. It's one of those kind of early 90s ASM books that it's kind of a cover by. The story's not super great, but it's a book that seems to get a little bit of attention. It's just fun anytime you get this many bad guys all in one place. Another book you may have seen in there, this is A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Beginning, #1. And this is from Innovation Publishing. It's actually part 1 of the origin story of Freddy Krueger. These Innovation horror books, you might skip over them as you're flipping through a dollar bin or something, but a lot of these books have a lot of value. Nothing crazy, but this is like a $20 book, and it's something that might not catch the attention of a lot of people. So keep an eye out for some of these innovation horror titles from the late 80s and early 90s. They may surprise you. The next book I picked out is this Captain America 354. Of course, this is the first time John Walker suits up as U.S. agent. It got really hot when the Falcon and Winter Soldier Disney Plus show came out a few years ago. It's kind of come back down. It's kind of maintaining, maybe getting a little bit of a bounce, because it has been confirmed that John Walker will be in the Thunderbolts. So still, not a bad book to have. I think I sold the last copy of this one I had back around the time when Falcon and the Winter Soldier did come out. So I haven't had one of these in a bit. So I'm glad to have another one of these in the inventory. This is the only DC book out of the lot that I pulled, and the collection had a lot of just random DC, like some Vertigo, a lot of indie stuff too. But the DC book I pulled is Green Lantern #51. This is the first real full appearance of Kyle Rayner as the Green Lantern. We get him on the cover for the first time. Of course, he debuted in the previous issue. But what makes this issue special is it's actually got the DC Universe logo down here in the bottom. And this is just a variant, essentially. They were reprinted, I think mostly sold at Toys R Us, but they were in multi-packs. But there is a niche market in the community for these things. There's collectors that specifically look and try and put together the DC Universe set. And the last I really looked into it, I'm not 100% sure that they even know what all issues exist in this DC Universe variant world. They're still discovering new ones from time to time. So it's just something to keep an eye out for. If you see what you think may be just a run-of-the-mill, kind of unimportant or just junk DC book, but it has this DC Universe logo, you may actually have something with a little bit of value there, because like I said, it's a small portion of the community, but there's people out there who will pay a premium for the DC Universe logo. So keep an eye out for those. The next couple of books I pulled are actually from Marvel Age, which, if you're not familiar with that, it was a cheap book. Marvel sold them for $1 back in the day, but it was basically kind of like Marvel's version of, their own fanzine or their inside news, their news magazine for their line of comics back in the 80s and 90s. The first issue I pulled is Marvel Age 90, and it has this great Todd McFarlane Spider-Man cover. Of course, it's around the time that Spider-Man #1 would have come out. So this is actually, I'm trying to decide if I want to pick this one up for myself or to leave it in the inventory. I don't have a copy of it, and, McFarlane Spider-Man is always a good thing to have. The next issue I pulled is actually Marvel Age number 97, and this issue contains a preview of Darkhawk. So before Darkhawk #1 came out, this thing would have hit the stands and roughly introduced or kind of given a little preview of Darkhawk to everybody. Now, the next issue is Marvel Age 98, and it did the same thing, only with the Toxic Avenger before that series started with Marvel. So a couple of cool preview issues there, some Todd McFarlane Spider-Man art from Marvel Age, and those things are pretty common, especially in the earlier ones, but it seems like the older ones can be harder to find, especially the older ones that are collectible like those. I don't come across a lot, so I was happy to find those. The next book I pulled, there was a small run of Sandman in this collection. What I pulled is actually Sandman Special #1, which is the Book of Orpheus. It's got the first appearance of Orpheus, Persephone, and Hades, and there's some scuttlebutt or rumor that they may actually be looking to cast those characters for season 2 of Sandman. So we may get an episode that adapts that story. Just a cool book. Sandman, such a great title. There weren't any significant issues of just the regular run that I found in that collection. So the special was really the best to pick out and talk about from what I was able to find in that collection. Next book, as you may have noticed as I was flipping through, this is an 80s and 90s collection. Believe me, there's a lot more that wasn't in that box that you didn't see that's just discount bin stuff. But since it is an 80s and 90s collection, as is required by state law, there was a Spawn #1 in there. So not a newsstand or anything, just a good old direct Spawn #1. It's beer in the fridge, honestly. You can't have enough Spawn ones floating around, or any of the early Spawn issues or keys especially. It's just, you may not sell them today, you may not sell them tomorrow, but sooner or later you're gonna sell down to where that one comes up. It's their turn in line. Next book, there were just a few issues of Uncanny X-Men in there. Nothing too crazy as far as significance for the most part. So I decided to grab this X-Men Alpha and talk about it. This is the first Age of Apocalypse story, and you got a lot of first appearances in there. Dark Beast, this is his first appearance. It's also the first time that Morph kind of is shown as just this featureless person. But on top of that, it's also a chromium cover, and we all know how 90s things like die cut and chromium covers were, so I couldn't talk about an 80s and 90s collection without including at least one noteworthy chromium cover in the discussion. I pulled out one last book from the box to talk about, and I'm going to use that as a segue to talk about what you didn't see in the box, because the best 2 books from the whole collection were not in the box when I was flipping through there. So stay tuned and I will show you what those are. But the last book I pulled is Deadpool, The Circle Chase #1. This is Deadpool's first ever miniseries. Not long after he debuted, it went for 4 issues. There's tons of these out there. It's nothing super special, but with interest in the character increasing over the last few years, Circle Chase has actually picked up a little bit of value. I think it's running between 10 or 20 bucks right now. It can be tough and high grade because, as you can see, it's a black cover, and it does have cardstock for the cover, so that can be pretty unforgiving when it comes to stress, creases, and color breaks and stuff. So there was actually issue 1 and 2 of Deadpool, The Circle Chase in the collection, and I grabbed #1 to talk about. And the reason I pulled Circle Chase #1 is actually to use it as a segue into what was the best book in the whole collection. There was a New Mutants 98 in this collection. Hands down the best book in the whole lot. It wound up being somewhere around 4 long boxes worth of books. And believe it or not, this thing was sitting on top of all the pictures that the seller sent me. So I got like 8 or 10 pictures from them when we were first kind of starting to talk about getting together to see if I wanted to buy the collection. And front and center on the 5th or 6th picture was this thing just sitting on top of a crate. Everybody's familiar with this book. It's literally been talked about to death. First appearance of Deadpool. Fabian Nicieza wrote it. Rob Liefeld drew it. There's a bazillion of these things out there, but you never hate having another one because they sell. Doesn't matter that there's a huge supply, there's a huge demand. And despite the fact that there's so many of them out there, there's still a good amount of value in this book. So it's got a little ding down here on the corner. It's not going to grade out in the upper 9, so it's not really worth grading to me. So I'll just be selling this guy raw. And, you know, the other copies I have, I actually am going to send to CGC. So it'll be nice to actually be able to put one of these things out for my next show. And the last book from this collection that was not seen in the video clip earlier, you may have wondered if it was there as I was flipping through some of the other issues of Secret Wars that were in the collection. But yes, there was a Secret Wars 8 in this collection. It's probably the most underwhelming Secret Wars 8 I've bought in a collection in recent memory. It's exceptionally mid-grade. It's got some creases. It's got some rips. It's got some staining. It's not a pretty copy, but it is a Secret Wars 8, and you know, there's a buyer for this book in any budget. So I have no doubt that this thing will go probably pretty quickly for the collector who is limited to what they can afford in the mid-grade range. So I'm happy to hook somebody up with this thing at my next show, which is actually coming up next weekend. I'll be in Kansas City for Planet Comic Con Kansas City. This is our 10th or 11th year setting up at the show. We are back at booth 1311, which is where we've been for the last couple years. So it's right up close to the entrance as everybody comes up the escalator. Very excited to be able to maintain that position and excited to get back out there and do a bigger show. It's been a bit since we've been on the road for anything other than just a small one-day show. So getting back out there, getting back to Kansas City, this is always our biggest show of the year. And to actually kick our year off with this show this year is kind of crazy. I don't know why. I'm pretty chill about it. Normally I'm running around just half panicked like a chicken with its head cut off. But this year I'm zen. I don't know. I feel like we've got it. So hopefully that's not just me fooling myself and everything goes great, but we shall see. That's enough business. Now let's talk about some things I picked up for the PC. We're going to start with my 2024 top 10 wish list. I'm happy to announce that I have been able to make the first check off of that list with the arrival of the Real Ghostbusters adaptation of Ghostbusters 2, issues 1 through 3. These guys are, I believe I've talked about this in other videos. These were actually the first comics I ever remember buying as a kid. So these obviously are not my personal copies. I only have issues, I think 2 and 3 that I can still find. And I know 3 has no cover. So like I said, I was 5 years old when these came out and they were very well loved. But with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire coming out here in a few weeks, I decided it was probably best to go ahead and snag these sooner rather than later. I got lucky and I actually found this lot that went through an auction on eBay, and I got these at a really great price. The buy it nows for sets of this have been ridiculous. I'm talking 50, 60 bucks for buy it nows. I wound up getting this for, I think, 25 bucks shipped, 30 bucks shipped. So at half of the going buy it now rate, I was really happy with them. Condition wise, they're pretty good. This number 1 has some rubbing and there's some spine stresses on one of the other issues, but you know, this is not one of those things where I wanted to have 9.8 copies because I'm going to slab them. I just wanted to have nice copies of these in the PC just to, you know, circle back and be able to reference these as the first comics that I ever did buy as a young comic book reader. So I can't tell you just how much I enjoyed flipping through them once they came in, seeing some of the old ads and just reliving old glories. Because I can't tell you how many times I've actually read these issues, but it's a lot. They did not sit idle for long when I had them originally when I was a little kid. Last weekend, me and Bob loaded up. We went to St. Louis and we hit a bunch of shops. And what we were doing is we were distributing postcards and flyers for the next Como comic book show, which is going to be here in Columbia, Missouri on April 20th. So I'm putting on another comic show, so I've got that going on as well. And one of the things I like to do when we go out and deliver those cards and flyers and stuff is I like to shop around and see what the shops have, and I like to make a purchase while I'm there just to thank them for supporting the show, helping us get the word out. So this next set of books I bought came from Tater Tot Comics in Arnold, Missouri, and what I found there is a set of Magneto Testament. This is a Magneto miniseries. It came out in, I think, 2008, 2009, but it's an origin story for Magneto. The story's not for the faint of heart. As you know, Magneto did go through the concentration camps. It's a central part of his character, and this is really the first time that was deeply explored. So you go back before the war, through the war, and it's hard to read, but it's an excellent read. And what I really like about the issues is you get these great Jurjevic covers. So I originally bought the deluxe hardcover of this series, and the hardcover is actually the cover to issue 2 here. That's what they use for it. And that image is just, it's fantastic. I've always loved that. But the whole series just has some amazing covers, all gray tone, except there's something in each cover that's got a red accent. And, you know, Jurjevic, before he was busy drawing connecting covers for things like Ultimate Fallout 4, you know, he was just nailing it with this miniseries and some of the other stuff. So it's not a valuable set. Like I said, I've had the deluxe hardcover for a while, and it actually came with like a lesson plan set. So if you were a teacher and wanted to use it to teach Holocaust stuff in like a history class, it actually came with lesson plan suggestions and materials to help you do that. I don't know if you know this, that's actually my education background. I went to school to be a high school teacher. It turns out I have expensive hobbies, so that's not what I wound up doing. But the fact that that hardcover came with it appealed to that aspect for me. So this is also a set that I haven't seen before. It's one of those things, since I got the hardcover and had read it, I wanted to add to the PC, and I finally was able to find one there at Tater Tot. So thanks to them for supporting us and for hooking me up with this set that I'd been looking for several years. On that same trip, we headed over to STL Comics, which is owned by my buddy Eric, and I wound up picking up another book while I was there. Same thing, you know, he's putting out postcards and flyers for us, helping us get the word out about the show. But he has had this Battle Beast #1 sitting behind the counter for a while now, and I've debated it and hemmed and hawed, and I finally decided that was the day I wasn't going to leave without it. So Battle Beast #1. If you're not familiar with Battle Beast, they actually come out of the Transformers universe, and they were little minifigures that came out in the late 80s that were pretty simple. They had a gimmick. You either had fire, water, or wood, so it was kind of an element-based thing. And I think the original concept was for it to be some sort of like a battle game. So, you know, you have your little minifigure, and then you see what symbol each character had, and whoever had the, imagine, you know, rock, paper, scissors, but with elements. Whoever had the element that beat the other one would win the battle. But I don't know that you can see in the background, but here I've got a couple rows of Battle Beasts. They're something I grew up with as a kid. Always loved them. So to grab this book made me very happy. It's from Blackthorn Publishing, which is a publisher I've never heard of. I've never run into these books before. It's only a 4-issue set, but they're pretty few and far between. So super happy to have this thing. And now I just got to find the rest of them. The others, it's kind of like most things. The #1 gets a little bit of value, and the rest of them are just kind of fillers. So I'll chip away at those as time allows and as opportunity allows. But now I've got the one. So yeah, now on to the next thing. And then the last book I've got to show you today is actually another book I got at STL Comics, but this one was earlier this year. I had gone there, just we were in town, I stopped in. I actually wound up buying a complete set of the real Ghostbusters and this book. I wasn't going to drag out the whole set and try and talk about that, but the other book I got is something that's been hot for a while, a book I've been looking for a while. Century #1, the A cover. Love this thing. Got it at a really nice price, so I was pretty excited by that. I think you're all caught up. It's great to be back out there picking up collections. I'm happy to have added some new books to the PC. It seems like sometimes I get a little too focused on buying inventory, buying collections, and forget to buy things for me. So going out and being able to get a few PC books to start this year off has been really nice. With some of my PC pickups, I've been able to flip some things out of my PC and flip those into the inventory. So like the Ghostbusters lot I wound up buying had a lot of duplicates. So at that point, you can just go through and pick the better stuff to keep for myself, and that stuff's now in the inventory. So it's just, you know, the circle of life. Things come, things go. And it's nice to be coming through winter, getting back out into convention season. I kind of operate in two phases of the year, the main one being convention or comic season, and then in the fall I kind of slow down, focus more on family things, and stay off the road. You know, we don't tend to do a lot of shows in November, December, January. Those tend to be slower sales wise as far as conventions and shows with the holidays. So, you know, just pack it up, take it easy, and focus on other things during those months. As for the channel, we are finishing up the spring series here in the next couple weeks. We've got the $20 budget video coming out very soon, and that's going to be quickly followed by the big video for the spring of 2024. And it's hard to imagine it's going to be just a few weeks and I'm going to be dropping videos that are titled Summer 2024. So I can't believe it's already March. It seems like, despite the fact we're just a couple of months in, 2024 has really been going at a breakneck pace thus far. So I don't know if it's just because it's so front loaded. You know, we've got Planet, the big show that we do every year, early this year. It's not as the earliest it's ever been, but being the second weekend in March, that's early traditionally for when the show is. And then after the Como show went well last August, I decided to do a spring show as well. So dealing with some of that has also kept me busy. So apologies if, you know, the schedule suffers a little bit here. I know last week we didn't get a video out, so I appreciate your patience and for sticking with us. If you know, a video doesn't come out, it's not because I didn't want to get a video out, but sometimes you've just got to prioritize other things, especially when you're up against the calendar and physical in-person events and stuff like that. So thank you everybody for sticking with me, and apologies for not getting you something out last week, but we're going to try and keep that at a minimum as we move forward. I hope you're all getting out there, picking up some deals. As you can see with the Ghostbusters 2 lot that I picked up on eBay auctions are still just where you can find some killer deals right now. So if you're not able to get out in person, or if there's not anything going on in your area, it's a pretty good time to be out there bargain hunting, especially for those eBay auction sales. So just kind of snoop around, see what's out there. I bet you can find something to add to your collection. Collect responsibly, and I'll see you in the next video.